Hi everyone, I'm Calvin Fu, Principal Advisor of 167. Thank you for taking the time to tune in this video today. Today I'd like to talk about shifting mechanistic routines to team enablement routines, or what you can see as shifting from egocentric to ecocentric routines. I think many of you might have heard about different concepts such as the holacracy, where you're actually moving away from more egocentric based structures where you got the top person driving everything to spreading the ability to create clusters of leadership, by basically spreading that leadership ability and decision making ability to everyone around the team. And if we understand these concepts, right, from moving from that to something that's circular in that sense, then we can understand what it means when we move away from just one person making a decision and everyone waiting for one person to make the decision, and everyone perhaps feeling the resonating fear of making decisions, for example. Then we start seeing decision making being shared by everyone. We start seeing areas of creativity, ideas, suggestions on how we should do things differently. We also start seeing a shift also in how we track progress or how we track risks or how we monitor situations and how we bring everyone closer together. Hence, by moving away from an egocentric to a more ecocentric structure, or egocentric to a more ecocentric structure, then we can see a higher level of team enablement. I think it's useful at this point in time to touch on, the differences between, for me, what I view as enablement or enabling versus managing versus leading. I have talked about this in one of my other videos called Are You Disenabling or Enabling Your Team? I believe strongly, based on my experience, that people do not need to be led, people do not need to be managed, people need to be enabled. The reason I say so is because if we are dealing with adult employees who have developed skills or technical skills in a particular area where they operate or deliver, whether it's a project or whether it's within the team, then we understand that people are innately, good at what they do. And that's the level of trust and belief we need to have. Of course, some of you might have, concerns on, different people not performing. However, the majority of the people, when I say majority means, 99% of everyone within a team who are adults are good at what they do, and they will become better at what they do because they will continue evolving. None of us will stop evolving. So to say we're good at what they do is good enough. We know, I don't think any one of us will ever be a top-notch expert across the world because things evolve and things will only get better. Hence, if we understand that if people are good at what they do, then the last thing we need to be doing is to manage their outputs or to require to lead them to deliver their outputs. They don't need that, right? They just need clarity. And which means for most parts, what people really need is to be enabled. And when I say for most parts, again, that people need to be enabled means I'm saying 80% or 90% of the time people need to be enabled. People do not need to be, and the rest of perhaps the 10 or 20% will be about managing or leading. In some instances, you might need to perhaps wear the managing hats. That could be or leading hand. That could be in different situations, such as you got a crisis, then of course you want rapid actions. Everyone wants to know immediately what they need to do, and they want to be, and of course that's those instances we trust that they can utilize the skills. And see what I mean, right? So people are innately good at what they do, and it's only in those situations that where we want to be managing, or if you're at a particular stage of, say, a forming, storming, performing stage where where people need to be led towards towards a particular direction. However, once you get towards performing, then things like leading, as you can imagine, then become less of importance. Enabling becomes more important. I think everyone, if we understand mechanistic, we understand egocentric. If we understand more of a regimental situations, then everyone, most of us will be familiar with the, typical meeting or typical environments where we have only the highest ranking, if I may use the word highest ranking person, who perhaps sits on the top end of the table or the middle end, or these days we try to, highest ranking try to disguise themselves, or rather not disguise, but try to diffuse themselves by sitting in the middle. However, you would still have many of us might still have seen occasions where that highest ranking individual is the one doing the talking throughout the 1 hour meeting session, or it might be worse, 1.5 hour meeting session. Or we might have also seen situations where we have, especially if in a military or maybe more of a regimental-based organization, or maybe conventional or traditional organization, where you have things like you got a standby progress kind of a check-in sessions where you got a team of maybe 10, 12 people could be in a room or in a meeting space, and perhaps you might be standing because it's a stand-up meeting, for example, that goes on for not 5 minutes or 15 minutes for stand-up, but maybe half an hour or more, where you have a standby progress where you actually do around the floor on how we have progress in front of everyone. Or you might also have a round table, how do I say, area by area updates that's provided by each area. So I think most of us will be familiar with these three different types of mechanistic routines, where either it's a standby progress, it's a highest ranking person that's just talking, or perhaps it's an area by area updates. And these are the three typical. You might have others that you have come across with, but these are typically the three different types of what I consider mechanistic ecocentric routines. And in calling egocentric and mechanistic routines, the connection that I'm sure all of us can make would be, it becomes more like a firing squad style, right? Or maybe a more extreme end of name and shame. If you can imagine, if we're doing a standby progress, or we're doing a highest ranking speaking only style, or we're looking at area by area updates roundtable, then really what we're seeing is people sharing their progress, or something or people sharing the progress that they're tracking or monitoring, or rational measure across everyone. Which means that I think hopefully everyone can imagine is that, when you talk about progress, then you talk about, are you 50%, are you 80%, are you 90%? There's the numbers, right? And that of course leads to people feeling shameful in terms of they're not progress, even though a 50% progress might be appropriate. However, when people start to talk about numbers and then there's questions in front of everyone, you're actually putting someone on a pedestal. And it might not necessarily be, in my opinion, a good way. Actually, it's not a good way of managing a team, because naming and shaming, while you're actually trying to create competition, you're actually creating a team on a basis of fear, because everyone's coming to the meeting would have that level of fear. So, not saying that such a check-in should be completely avoided. I think it's more about what is the balance. Just like, if we can have 80%, which is more of an enabling style of leadership, versus, an 80% more of a leading style of leadership, then we're seeing the difference. Right? We're seeing more of a different environment. I think we are familiar, and we always say, we always use words such as micromanager. We always use words such as, this environment is a difficult environment because, it's an egocentric environment. I think if we have all used these kind of statements, and hence I'm sure we all understand the difference between when we have an enabling culture, how does it make us feel, right? It makes everyone feel a lot more happier. When we are happier, then the impacts of feeling happy would be, of course, less anxiety. Less anxiety means higher level of creativity. When less anxiety also means a more of a comfort for everyone to be sharing or voicing out how they feel, or perhaps being a lot more concerned for one another. And also, when people are a lot more happy, then they make a closer connection towards an environment that's not feeling too much of a work environment, but also an environment in which they feel at home, right? So I can continue on, right? We all make all these statements. That we spend 8 hours a day, or more than 8 hours, at least 8 hours. Sometimes I remember working 12 hours in the office. Then more so we need to focus heavily on how do we make the office environment something that's pleasant, so that when we get people walking into an office, they're not doing is to take a mask off and put on a work mask on, because putting on a work mask on means they're no longer them, right? So they're just carrying a persona. And if they're going to carry a persona for an expected 8 hours a day, in which the balance 16 hours is just not them, then I think we should think about what are the actual impacts in terms of what kind of team culture or people are we actually creating. So I think understanding how an egocentric and mechanistic culture, a regimental-based corporate environment, perhaps regimental might not be a good word, but the reason I use regimental, I'm saying heavily structured, where it's all a command and control style. That's when I use the word regimental. It means that I've been in the military for a bit, so I do understand what a regimental culture is. But definitely, it's nothing of detriment that I'm trying to share. But there's the ability to differentiate that. So if we understand how it makes everyone feel, if it's an egocentric or a mechanistic culture, and we understand what it impacts to the team, then it makes a lot of sense that and also understanding that it's human, right? We have a public culture that's evolving, right? We are moving from the days of ecocentric leadership. If we date back to the wars where you've got dictators, and today we have progress into we've evolved and progress into inclusive cultures where people can move towards being who they want to be, right? So we can see that we are progressing to more we're moving away from an egocentric to a more ecocentric environment. Hence, when we unfold all of this, then we now touch on what we all say people are the most valued asset, right? And if people are most valued asset, then what we need to think about is the first thing is that people are not machines. People are not. They don't operate. They don't deliver. Or they're not. Or they don't become who they want with the press of the button. They're not computers, right? We can put in a new firmware or change to dark mode or day mode screen and things like that. People are not machines. People are not pencils, right? You can't just sharpen them and you just resharpen them again. People are human beings. Hence, if we understand that people are the most valued asset, then we then are able to then take a step back and understand that the emotions behind, there's ability to communicate, there's ability to share, there's ability to see, to be able to listen, to be able to sense. There's a need to have clarifying environments. There's a need for individuals to share what sort of mental well-being, what sort of status they're feeling, right? That's all. It's because people are not machines, okay? So if we understand that people are the most valued assets, then and also that it's human, that most of us may have fears at the back of us, leaders will have fears, executives will have fears, individuals will have fears. There are also other considerations such as some of you might heard about this concept called dark triad, where you got your Machiavellianism, you've got your psychopathy, you've got your narcissistic, and the dark triad is a personality, right? Without diving into that, if we understand that there's all this understanding of this dark triad, their fears, then we understand that the human beings will have a tendency to move into fight or flight mode, and to be able to perhaps shape a particular situation if it might not be going their way and they're feeling some fears, in which the actions might then lead to different impacts or consequences that make other people feel uncomfortable. If it makes other people feel uncomfortable, then people start to feel like they're in a mechanistic environment. Hence, when we talk about people are the most valued asset, and if the environment or the culture is moving, it's moving towards the culture's moving the environment towards their way, then we're going to see productivity falling off. We're going to see a fearful culture. We're going to see a culture that perhaps would not be as creative as we would like it to be, or as communicative and so on as we like it to be. Hence, the ability to shift towards a more ecocentric culture, as everyone should be able to now imagine in this talk, is then important, right? And if we now understand, based on what we shared earlier, the difference between an ego and ecocentric culture, right? Then we are able to then be aware of what we want to avoid doing. Again, I think it's important to express that it doesn't mean we're going for 100% ecocentric culture or 100% egocentric culture. What I'm trying to say is most of the time we should be ecocentric, or what I'm also trying to say is what is the appropriate mix depending on the situation, which we apply differently, right? Because in an emergency situation, you really have got no time to be in that sense being ecocentric, because that 1 second may cost a life, right? So it's what I'm trying to say is that for what's more important for us is to be able to differentiate between an ego and an ecocentric, and then to understand based on situation what is the balance within in that particular time, right? And it's all about shifting towards an ecocentric culture, of course. The best scenario is that we are typically ecocentric rather than saying we're typically egocentric. The best outcome we want to, if we can get, is to be able to say we are typically ecocentric. The other thing that we covered was that majority of people, as we know, are really good at what they do. All right. I've not had a team, regardless of what people might say, that who did not know what they're doing, or who were not giving their best. Everyone, every staff, every team, whether you're a ground crew, whether you're an executive, you are giving your best. All right. Everyone is good at what they do. Okay. But not everyone might be familiar with an ecocentric culture or an egocentric culture, or mechanistic practices, versus more of a ecocentric or an enablement-based practices, right? But everyone is good at what they do, and we understand that everyone is good at what they do, and then we are then clear that we're then aware that we are there to help them become better at what they do. We're not there to teach them how to do it. We're actually there to be able to help them unleash what they do well. And the ability to do that means to understand what's the difference between enabling, managing, and leading. And also the other part about the ability to shift towards a more ecocentric culture is the ability to listen. In one of my previous videos, I talk about listening, and I provide a methodology from the space of Theory U. It's by the Processing Institute of MIT. It was created by Dr. Otto Sharma. And listening is a underlying fundamental in driving success. And that's my personal experience. Because when we start to listen, it's not just listening to everyone around you, right? And when I say listening, it means not seeing but not looking, listening but not hearing, as well as sensing, not feeling, right? So we're talking about the ability to listen to others, which also means the ability to listen to ourselves and how we're behaving, how we're performing, and what we're doing. And then the next part is, as well as the understanding that people do not need advice. And again, when I say people don't need advice, people typically do not need advice. People typically need clarification. Hence, the ability to tilt environments to a more clarifying environment is then important towards shifting towards an ecocentric environment, right? So if we can take note of all these things, then we are then creating an awareness that starts with us. And if you're an executive, whether you're a CEO or CXO, or whichever CXO you are, or you're a director, you're a manager, or you're a team leader, and so on and so forth, if we are then aware of the differences between an ego and ecocentric, then we then exude those energies, because we are not only practicing, practicing our awareness through our how we see things, or through how we listen to things, or through how we sense things, through our body. we're not only exuding those energies, but we're also being able to corral that kind of environment towards those outcomes. And when people can feel those energy and outcomes, then they start to build trust and they start to tilt towards a more ecocentric environment. And of course, the benefits of an ecocentric environment, in my personal experience, has been really powerful. You would see things like reduced attrition, you see higher levels of creativity. You also be able to see things like a more deeper progress towards learning a new skill or developing a new capability within the team. You also see a lot more cohesiveness, and you also see a lot more loyalty and trust within the team environment. Okay, I'm gonna leave those ecocentric and egocentric thoughts with you. So have them on just laying towards your side. And what I want to do next is to start chiming into enablement routines, okay? And it's largely around how do we shift. And again, most organizations are very familiar with mechanistic routines, and it might not be as easy as you might feel, because it's also the individual and how the individual is it's going to implement a more ecocentric routine or more enablement routine and shift away from a mechanistic routine. I don't think it's every environment that you walk into you would immediately be able to implement that. I think these are some areas you got to consider. However, in my personal experience in being in different types of organization environments, I cannot say I could not express any more about the power of an ecocentric environment. I've seen how powerful it is when we turn the structure on its head, when we move to a more holacracy or holacratic environment where we actually enable teams to take ownership. I can't say more than what I'm saying. Really, it's really powerful, and of course, I do strongly encourage if teams can actually move more towards that space. Okay, I'm going to move to the back screen. And what I want to do next is I want to be able to create some kind of perhaps a guide, okay? A guide on, I'm going to say, team enablement routines. Okay, so a lot of considerations that we might think about, right? We always think about talent management, right? Everyone should be familiar with talent management, and several things around talent management, would include things like so talent acquisition is one, talent development, as well as talent retention, right? So these are typically the three areas. If you're leading a team or you're running an organization that even if you're not running an organization, you're not a leader in that sense, but you are say a ground crew person, you would also be wondering what are the practices of an organization across these three areas. So keep in mind talent management in terms of acquisition, development, retention, because throughout the life cycle, right? We of course, or towards these different phases of talent management, we want to be able to resonate a team enablement culture with our talent. And the next thing is to be able to understand, all right, so when we think about engagement within an organization, there are different types of engagement, right? So what I want to do is to just describe a few types of engagement. I'm going to say perhaps you have got, I'm going to call it team enablement in this, right? So I'm going to be forward-looking and team enablement. So you have team enablement routines, you have, and that's around, so assuming you got a team of 7 or up to 15 individuals. And again, there is depending on what sort of function you're leading in terms of its environment, its characteristics or operations. Sometimes 15 people might be too many, or 7 might be too little. But I like to think of anything between 7 or 8 under one leader, where you have one perhaps senior manager leading 7 managers. I think typically that's sort of a sweet number. Having any more than that in terms of managing senior leadership structures, I think that's heavy. However, if you are a team leader and you have you're running a more administrative or more process-oriented team, you could have as many as 15 or maybe even maybe 18 or maybe 20 might be stretching it, people under you. But it also depends on how you spread your the next level perhaps leads within. So but today's talk is not about the best match, but like being human. If one person is managing 7 or 8, you actually get an adequate attention. Okay, so from an engagement perspective, you got team engagement. You have got operational. You also have got I'm going to call it general. Okay, so team enablement is the immediate team you're managing. The operational areas are things like your actual projects that you deliver, or perhaps your administrative, what may call it administrative routines, things like reporting and things that is internally they got to deliver. So these are operational engagement. And then your general engagement could mean areas such as perhaps you have your town hall sessions where you got your chairperson or your CEO doing their scheduled monthly or something, or something where it's basically a one-way information for everyone. Or you got other areas such as maybe your executive briefings, just to name a few, as well as perhaps your group engagement routines. Okay, so all these are perhaps areas in which would be, you might not be able to apply much of an enablement situation. But the person who is, say, leading a general engagement session should be able to exude more eco-centric behaviors rather than egocentric behaviors, right? As well as, say, if you have operational engagement sessions where you have project meetings, similarly, you can also engage a more ecocentric practice rather than a more egocentric practice. So it's just understanding the balance on how do you ensure that you create an environment where everyone is going to look forward to attending, rather than go, oh my, is this another ear chewing session. And when we get to team enablement, which is more of the purpose of this talk today, then you will have 2 areas. And the first area is, I want to use this. Yeah, there we go. The unplanned, the plan, let me say plan and unplanned. Okay, and when I say plan, so I'm going to give everyone just an idea on how I have been managing my teams, and hopefully this might suit your needs. So typically how I run my team is I have a weekly, I got 2 weekly sessions. One is what I call a start of week, or what I call Monday starts. And I typically like to come in because we have just finished a weekend, everyone's coming in, we want to be able to do a check-in, and I'll cover a little bit more of the agenda after this. We want to be able to do a check-in with everyone, how everyone is feeling. We want to be able to tap into what everyone might be, the thoughts that might have come up for everyone over the weekend, or, if there are areas in which we might need to help our team because perhaps something has happened at home and in their homes, and then we need to figure out how, we can be of service to them in helping them unfold. So we got, we will cover a little bit more next. We got weekly Monday starts. We've also got, what I usually like to do is I also like to have midweek check-ins. Okay, and that's like typically on a Wednesday where we do a quick check-in, and with these weeklies, typically Monday starts. I go with the full hour, and with the midweek, I'll usually go minimum 30 minutes. So typically the invite that I'll send out will have a full hour, but we'll go through the first 30 minutes and we'll see whether we got to take the second 30 minutes. And with the midweek check-ins as well, it's dependent on what's the situation. If you have a period where there's really heavy priorities to be delivered and the team is feeling quite vexed, and that's where you might want to change out the balanced 30 minutes to perhaps figure out if you need to continue breakout sessions with individuals, or you might have to continue the second half an hour to perhaps unfold certain critical deliveries that you feel might be weighing down the team, or perhaps it's just that second half an hour for midweek check-ins to going out for a coffee, right? Or say, hey, here's your time back. Okay, but yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea. So 2 weekly check-ins, two weekly team meetings with the Monday starts, and the midweek check-ins is what I usually propose. You can be in person, which obviously usually is the best, or on Teams, whichever, right? We are in a post-COVID environment, so conducting a meeting over Teams shouldn't be an issue for most people these days. And with your plan session as well, you would have your monthly. So what I usually have is our monthly one-on-ones. Okay, one-on-ones, and these are typically anything from 1 to 1.5 hour sessions. And the agenda really is, for these sessions, I don't write any agenda. It typically is a blank sheet, and what it is that it's to create the agenda together on the day itself, and it's all about the team or the team member that you're meeting, or where you have your monthly one-on-ones. It's all about them. It's not about you. It's all about them, right? And these sessions could be, you're heading out to lunch for lunch together, and it's largely around, if you can, avoiding talking about work. I mean, not if you can. It's avoiding talking about work and project routines. It's about talking about this person, about how this person is feeling at work, perhaps, and even at home. It's about learning more about each other, and this is what the monthly one-on-ones are about. And lastly, within this plan environment, you would also have what you call your skip sessions. I call it skip sessions. Some of you might call it something else, but skip sessions are basically my reporting person, or my boss, will be meeting my team members, and these typically happen. These skip sessions could be either bi-monthly or quarterly. Okay. Quarterly skip sessions, and these are typically an hour, or sometimes 30 minutes to an hour. Okay, so it could be my immediate manager meeting my team, or it could be I meeting my team's team, if that makes sense. So those are the skip session, and the intention of skip sessions is to be able to create that feedback loop, right? And to be able to to be able to receive that feedback on perhaps how I'm feeling, or how my other teams that's being led by my managers are feeling about my immediate manager. So it creates that level of openness across everyone. Some areas to consider is that how it depends on how hard the organization is, right? Not everyone's going to have a session with the executive. Hence, many times the gaps are mainly in that space, and how do we close those gaps? How do we bring executives down? How do we get those conversations going? Then becomes a different focus. But it's not something we will cover in this talk today. In this talk today is our immediate team and enablement routines. Okay, and then when you think about plan sessions, then plan sessions are typically unplanned sessions, unplanned sessions are typically breakout sessions. Like, so you could be, you are having a weekly or a midweek check-in, and you have items, that you need to that you perhaps didn't cover in the operational or project administrative, and it was raised. Then what you want to do is to immediately schedule an unplanned session, right? So these unplanned sessions could be coming from your start or midweek check-ins. And also an unplanned session could be a project check-in, where perhaps the operational meetings were insufficient to provide the level of enablement to your team. Hence, you needed to schedule an unplanned project check-in. Okay, so with this now, hopefully this gives us a sort of a good overview on what sort of meeting structures. We have talked about mechanistic environments and how the focus should be on shifting to an ecocentric environment. So what I want to do next is I want to create an agenda. So to give everyone a much better idea on what is the agenda we are after. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a bit of a color at the back here so we can see that, or maybe not color. Might do just, yeah. Okay, got some information here. So I want to build an agenda, and I might put a bit more columns here in case we need a bit more information. Okay, here we go. So typically, let's bring the size down to 9. All right, so what we got, I'm going to call this item, I'm going to call this duration. All right, and the focus is on these areas, right? On the team enablement areas, on how I typically schedule that. So of course, your first item when you get in is always to check in, okay? And then the second is to unfold. The third is business, which I typically leave as optional. And the fourth is checkout. Okay, so picture this, there are four intentions, okay, as if you're leading a check-in session that you want to be able to cover. All right, and the first one is check-in, the second is to unfold together, and I'll touch a little bit, I'll touch on that. And the third is an optional business, and the last one is check out. Sorry. Okay, check-in typically is, so picture this, everyone says come in from, say it's 9 a.m. or say it's 9 a.m. or 9 a.m. right, and people have arrived, and some people might have started at 8. They might have come from different meeting. They might be a little bit vexed, or some might be extremely happy, or some might be just starting the day, and they might have come into this Monday check-in session. So we're going to talk about this Monday check-in session, and they might have arrived in this Monday check-in session a little bit more vexed because of some challenges at home, or they might have had a great weekend and really happy. So you're going to get different people coming into the session. So you might have, say, call it 7 or 10 different people there, and everyone's arriving at different, can we say, wavelengths. And the purpose of the check-in really is to get everyone to normalize the environment, and to bring themselves to a shared space. And what I typically like to do is just a one-word check-in, where I would say, and typically how I do it, right, is oops, I'll just skip that. Oh, actually I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put agenda. And one word check-in, right? And what I typically do with one word check-in is the first thing I'll say is typically how I run it is I give everyone 10 seconds or something and think about a one word on how they are arriving. Okay. Let me shrink this down. Okay, so one word check-in. So typically about 10, more than 10 seconds, of course. And the purpose of the 10 seconds really is to invoke silence. Because when everyone is thinking, then they're now sharing a space, right? And that one word check-in typically gets everyone into the zone on how they're arriving. Sometimes what happens is that the check-in might entail one person perhaps sharing a story, but I typically would move towards one word check-in. Or the other way, one word check-in could be a minute of silence or grounding session. Okay, so I was gonna put this like that. There we go. So you got three different choices here. You got a minute of silence, a grounding session. A grounding session will be something where you have someone do Google grounding session on for a script, where you get everyone to perhaps share silence, shut their eyes. A short meditative session could last for 2, 3, or 5 minutes. Just if you can Google that. So that's a grounding session without covering too much in this talk. Or a minute of silence or one word check-in. And then once everyone is settled and check-in, that's where you want to unfold together. And typically what I do is I would then go with open-ended questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in several different types of open-ended questions, right? So a few things I might ask is, how do I see my week ending? So I ask questions like that. So what you do, and what I usually do is to unfold this, I could use a whiteboard, right? All right, so I use a whiteboard to write those questions on the whiteboard, if there's one. Or basically, I will use or email window, right? Using the invite, okay? So I use the email window using the invite if you're on Teams. All right, so if you're on Teams, then you call the invite out, because the invite would then have the headers and you have the agenda that you have set in there. And then what you can do is you would then type out the first question, which is, how do I see my week ending? Because you want everyone to see, right? And what do you want to do once and usually I will have 2 questions. Sometimes depending on the time I might have 3, but usually I will only go with 2 questions because that's quite a fair bit. And once you have the questions, then you want to give everyone maybe a couple of minutes to think about. So a few questions, right, could be, how do I see my week ending? I could ask, what is something that makes me happy? Okay. What is this week, saying to me, all right, so these are powerful, what I call powerful questions that I would ask. You could also have things like what thoughts do I need to be conscious of? Okay, so these are different questions, or you could also have, how am I arriving today? Okay, how am I arriving is different to the one word check-in, because one word check-in is how they're feeling immediately at that point in time, and how am I arriving today could be a myriad of thoughts or way more information in terms of how they're arriving. What other areas I can think about would be, how did last week end for me? How was my weekend? Okay. My 3 intentions for the week. The 3 thoughts on my mind. Okay, so here you can see you got several different unfolding questions here, and what I typically do is, because if you're heading a team, you would then know what the current situation is, right? Which means that you'll be able to then mix and match these questions with different facets, right? So for example, I could go, all right, so here are my 2 questions, and then I would go on the whiteboard, right? So using the whiteboard, as an example here. Okay, so I'm going to close this out a little bit more. You can have a make-believe whiteboard here. There we go. Okay, so assuming this is a whiteboard, open this up and then go. So typically what I do, I would then, what I typically do is I go, if it's a Monday, how am I arriving today? Okay. Some might be a bit strapped for space here. So picture it as a whiteboard, right? And then so my first question, and I'm writing with a marker, and then the next thing I'll go is my 3 intentions for the week. Okay. Okay, there you go. So once I write this on a board, or using Teams, using an email and sharing that screen on email with everyone. If you're on Teams, ensure that everyone's got their cameras on. I think it's important that everyone's got their cameras on, that people don't participate on a Teams meeting or whatever video conference meeting with the cameras off. I just think it's emotionally disrespectful to everyone else in the team, and I think it's essential that everyone turns the camera on, because if you're in a actual meeting room, everyone can see your face. So I think that's important. But that aside, so what I do is I'll put these 2 questions and I'll leave a gap there. So and you could have your different team members, and what I'll do then after giving everyone, so typically I'll say these are the 2 questions. Now take 3 minutes. And we just go through 3 minutes. Everyone keeps quiet for 3 minutes. No one talks, no one giggles. because everyone needs to be respectful of the space that they hold with one another, right? So picture this. So we need to be able to hold that space, hence we hold the silence. And typically we go through 2 or 3 minutes. And of course what you do is look around and you'll be able to observe who has finished, who has not. And once the majority of people have finished, then what you want to do is to just whoever is comfortable starts to unfold. And it's just let the team go with it, or like a popcorn style, for a better metaphor, or you pick someone if you like. And what then happens then, each person shares, then we would just type it in without any names, or names if you like, because it helps knowing how you can help the individuals. And also you want to be able to share this information with the immediate team. So it's this information is shared within the team, but not external, but within the team, because it also represents a kind of a meeting minutes that that everyone knows what we've come together, what are the perhaps follow-ups, or and all the different information that might have shared. So how am I arriving today? Some people might say I had one person might say I have a beautiful weekend with family. Okay, it's a Monday, right? And then some might say that house is a mess due to flood. Someone might say I'm really anxious due to deadlines. Okay, and then some could say I'm excited. Lots to accomplish. Okay. Oops. So picture this, right? Everyone is sharing in a room or on Teams. How are they arriving? Everyone sharing openly on what they're feeling. When you first start out on an enablement routine or an ecocentric style of meeting, it might take a while before everyone starts getting comfortable. Remember, it's in ecocentric space. It's a culture that thrives by itself, right? That people create together, and it's something that's organic. It will take time to unfold. It could be immediately. Might take 2 or 3 sessions. And it also takes you takes us as a facilitator or leader to encourage the level of openness. So if you're applying this in a mechanistic environment or egocentric environment, you might get everyone feeling apprehensive at first, and most people will probably not be as open as these answers. But that's okay, right? It takes a while. It takes trust. And it takes. Yeah, you just got to believe in everyone, because then that energy slowly resonates. So as you can see here, you got different responses, right? One person has said a beautiful weekend with family. It's gorgeous, right? That's house is a mess due to flood, anxious due to deadlines. Okay, and then what you then do next. So typically, what I would say, how I do is I won't go through the responses just yet. But one by one, each person will share what they're feeling. So what I've done here is to go through each question, but in reality, every person will share both answers, right? So if we go to what are my top 3 intentions, you could have one person house sale. Let's call it settlement. All right, this person saying that. You might have this person saying this. That's the first thing is on this person's mind. So if you can get to this level where everyone's comfortable, that's brilliant. You have quite an ecocentric culture, in my opinion. And then you could say there is a business plan for customer experience. You also have got a reporting. Okay, reporting monthly. All right. So for example, this person, let's call this person, let's just say DD. So DD has shared, and then we call this person AA. Let's just imagine that's their initials. Okay, and then so DD shared that, and then after that, of course, it was AA, BB, and CC, right? So of course, if you have 7 or whatever, then you just write it out, and that's why probably 2 questions is typically it. So what you then do is, once you got your information everyone shared, so think of this, right? Everyone now knows how each other are feeling. You know how everyone is feeling. Of course, one of the responses will be you as well on the whiteboard. So everyone knows how each other are feeling. You know how everyone is feeling. And what you can now do is then lean into what everyone has unfolded, right? So for example, you could go to Didi and say, hey Didi, all right, here's the challenge for you. Challenge is within 15 seconds, talk about your beautiful weekend with the family. All right. So here you see we have got a bit of a time constraint because we've got, in this instance, we've got an hour, but maybe there are other things we want to talk about on the business optional. And also it also enables a kind of a fun tact, within the team, right? By saying you've got 50 seconds to share that in a fun way, because everyone wants to share, in that space. Or you could just say, hey, just take some time, but not too long, and let them share. So this person might say, this is what happened. I had family over. We were enjoying this. We were enjoying that. And then, depending on what you want to do, you could either then jump into the my 3 intentions for the week question, or you could just continue unfolding how I'm arriving today. How am I arriving today, right? It just depends on how you sense into the day. You've got a bit more time. Everyone seems to be a bit more relaxed, and that's fine. If not, then what you might want to do is you want to split. So let's assume we're gonna split that. Then we just go through, and of course you have got AA now who has got quite an issue, right? So put yourself in these AA shoes. If your house is in a mess now due to flooding, you're gonna need some kind of understanding or some kind of support to see through this mess. If this person is single, just thinking out loud, then obviously this is the only person going to be resolving it themselves. If this person has got a partner, then it might be a balancing act between them two. You know what I mean? So you got to picture that someone's personal space or personal life is in a mess now. The house is flooded. Might not have any clothes. There's going to be a cleanup. There's going to be furniture, basically a big mess that's going to be moved out. They likely would have struggled just to come to work because things are all over the place. So picture that their home circumstances no longer, no longer of a normal state, and think about how that's going to impact their work. And then what we then need to be able to do is, if this is a situation for me, I will immediately go, all right, shall we book some time after this to talk about how I might be able to help you? Okay? So that's where you now go to here, right? You have got your unplanned session where you will set up a session with AA to say, hey, you got 15 minutes after this. I want to know how I can help you with with this flooding. Because this person might say, hey, I'm going to need to be at home during this time when the restorers, or what do you call them, the restoration agents are over, and I will not be able to work. I need some time off, right? So you're going to need to assist in that. Then when you go to BB, you got this person who said they got anxious, they're feeling anxious due to deadlines. So what you want to do is you can either say to BB and say, hey, you want to talk a little bit more about what you're going through, or would you like for us to maybe jump in a room, for 15 minutes after. But do take note. I got to talk to AA first. And then of course with CC was excited, then you could get CC like to share what they are excited to share. Then that's fantastic. All in across these areas is to encourage people to share what they're going through. If individuals are not comfortable sharing, it's okay. We want them to feel comfortable. Then that's where we would then say, hey, how about you and I, let's just jump on a call or separate call, or let's jump in a room, and just to unfold how I could help you with in those space. And so if we're going through a split agenda, then of course the first one is how am I arriving today. You want to cover that. Then the next is my 3 intentions. So my 3 intentions is where you're going to start talking about actual activities that individuals need to deliver, and it could be home or it could be things at work. So if we take DD for example, house sale settlement, then there's intentions, right? Then of course the thing on your mind is if you have sold a house before, there's settlement, there's going to be a handover, and having sold a house means that this person likely would have bought another one. This person currently still struggling in renting. Are they living somewhere else? Have they found another place? Are they still struggling to find a place to purchase? Are they currently settling the new house as well, right? So if you understand that, then you understand that it's quite a big thing if you're moving in or you're trying to settle a property. So you understand this person's got something in their mind. So you need to take consideration and similar. Do you want to catch up for 15 minutes to talk about how I might be able to help you in that space? Because this person might say, no, I'm okay, I'm really okay, but occasionally I might just pop up, have a bit of a longer than usual lunch just to settle this. And it depends on what sort of organization. If you're an organization that everyone is on the clock, then this might be a little bit of a challenge because you need to figure out how to fill up those roster gaps. But if you're an organization where everyone is senior specialists or specialists within the field, or if you're government officers within the field, then you might be able to find different ways for them to make up time. But the talk is not about making up time today, but the talk today is all about how to create those enablement routines. And then so DD has got a house settlement, so you understand that, but DD has also got a business plan for the week that needs to be either compiled or ready for review for CX, called it Custom Experience CX, and also there's a monthly reporting that's due. So likely let's just say this is the end of the month, the first the Monday or the end of the month session, and in doing so, then you'll be able to then unfold with DD, right? Just to think out loud again, how you can provide that assistance in that space, and DD might say, can I get 15 minutes of a check-in? So picture that then it goes into AABBCC. So by the end of this part 2 of Unfold Together, you would understand how everyone has arrived. And again, depending on the questions that you're going to ask, you also understand what the 3 intentions for the week. And as an outcome, you would also have booked separate sessions with AA, with BB, as well as with DD. Let's just assume CC is doing fine this week. So picture that, right? The unfolding has allowed you to not only understand where the progress of activities are, what are the key intentions for the week in delivering work-based activities, but also what are the intentions that are home. Understanding that when they turn up at the office, they are still human beings. They will still have thoughts, right? They are not machines. They're not they're not mechanical. So when we can address these 2 areas together, then we see a completely different environment. And then, so typically your check-in should take you about, say, 5 minutes. Sometimes it might be a bit more chats and stuff like that, but that's okay. You might have some time that you move around, and in that hour as well, you might go on for. So I typically go on for about 30 minutes to maybe for 30 minutes to, I'm going to say 40. Okay. And your business information typically could be key highlights, So if you're a manager or a leader, then you have leadership updates, for example, valuable ones, and you could also go through any kind of key questions. But typically, key questions from the team, when you cover the unfolding part, typically you won't have much questions here. And then any kind of key thoughts, okay? And this typically could be 20 minutes. All right, depending on what you're covering in that session. Okay, and then finally you would have a checkout, which is about 5 minutes, which is about 3 minutes typically. I'm going to say 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so if we put it all together, and the checkout typically will be what came up for us. That's typically the question I like to ask. Okay, so what you see here is a typical, what I call more of an ecocentric team meeting style. Noting that there are operational, in this team enablement, operational and general engagement, there are already operational meetings that would have been scheduled differently. Project meeting schedules will have its own, call it cadence, if you will, as well as the administrative-based activities would have its own cadence, right? So these are ongoing, perhaps checking 15-minute stand-up sessions or half an hour sessions where you get updates on these areas. You also have the expectations around operational that people will be following up on reports and reading. So what you want to do is to bring everyone into a room to unfold things that do not matter with each other, such as a particular performance of a different area, and then you're sitting through for 1 hour when nothing else really matters to you apart from for the 5 minutes, right? Then that becomes very unproductive. And also you've got, also taking note that you've got your general sessions, which are your town halls, your executive briefings, right? These are separate sessions that are kind of not within your control as well. But these are sessions where everyone should attend in that sense. And when we then go back to team enablement, this team enablement then enables everyone to come together, everyone to learn more about each other, what they are perhaps going through at home, what they're going through at work. Also allows everyone to then chime in with each other to know, hey, is there any areas that we can help with? Because for example, when we talk about AA's house being a mess, right? Automatically, a natural thing is that someone's going to say, "Oh, I've been through that. Is there anything you can help with?" Right? Again, as a leader, we need to minimize the amount of advice that someone's wanting to give, or if we feel that we're still there to, in the case, facilitate the session, right? Because we don't want people to be fixated on one topic, but we want some conversations to happen. So, and we want to be able to, gently say, hey, we're kind of going to move on, not making people feel disrespected in a sense, but understanding that time is still an essence. So hence, when everyone is coming together, everyone's sharing, then you start to, if you can picture this, when everyone's comfortable in sharing over time, and then you start to see that people start to, I don't want to say let their guard down, but start being more of themselves, to be comfortable in expressing what they're feeling, what they're going through, to be able to then approach as a team what sort of help they might need. To not be afraid to approach you as a leader or for help, because they know that through the different sessions, for example, in the various sessions, you've always said, hey, shall we take 15 minutes after this to catch up on this matter? They understand that that's your practice, right? They feel comfortable with you. And also when we go through the agenda as well, you can see that this agenda is not about everyone standing in a room or standby progress check-in. It's not an area by area check-in. Neither it's a highest ranking person speak only kind of a setup. It's actually a session where everyone is driving it together, if you can notice that. And when you start to do this, then you would start to be able to see a team that has got a more ecocentric culture, and you'll start to see that you're actually driving enablement, and you're moving away from managing, you're moving away from leading. You're driving an enabling leadership style. And when you can do this, then of course, you will see all those benefits that we spoke about earlier, where you're going to see creativity, you're going to see a reduction in attrition, you're going to see a happier teams, you're going to be able to see more interest in developments, you're going to be able to see a more courageous approach in learning something new, or picking up new skills or new capabilities. Okay, I would like to encourage everyone to give this a go. It's not something that it might not be something that you might be able to achieve its outcome on this first session, but I can say that if you take maybe 2-3 weeks to gradually unfold this routine, I'm quite certain that you'll be able to see it. But I think the main thing is that it's definitely beneficial. It's something that I've seen its benefits in terms of how it has worked for the teams that I've led. Okay, thank you very much for tuning into this talk, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.